Welcome to Everything Gaming. Today I'd like to talk about digital and physical. Let's get down to it. Alright, so there's kind of a debate about whether or not you should be buying your games digital or physical. Now, as I'm sure, thanks to my videos, you've been able to tell which one I prefer. Now, there are obvious advantages to both mediums. For instance, with digital, you have a lot of convenience factor. You know, you don't have to change discs. You can just select the game and play and move on from there. But there are also some disadvantages to digital that I'd like to bring up. For instance, if a game gets delisted, or say you're on an older console and the PlayStation Store or vice versa gets shut down, you lose access to those games. You don't really have them anymore. And there are actually quite a few games in my collection that can still play despite the fact that they've been delisted from marketplaces, essentially. Now, some of the bonuses of having physical is, well, you have this really cool case, there's steelbooks, stuff like that. You actually will own this for as long as you decide to keep it, and you can easily lend it to other people who have other consoles without having to do any sharing on PSN or anything like that. So those are some of the bonuses of having physical. Not to mention, there are a lot of digital fans who will make jokes and make memes about physical gamers and digital gamers both having to download the whole game, which is a misconception. For instance, I'm assuming they haven't actually bought a physical game in a long time, because besides like big, huge games like Call of Duty, which are 130 gigabytes or whatever, when you buy something like Guardians of the Galaxy, it copies all that you need from the disc. It does have an update, but that's usually just bug fixes and things like that, so that it won't be as glitchy. Now, there are quite a few games. I've even had some that will copy 80 gigabytes from the disc, which is pretty much the whole game right there. And I think that a lot of people take for granted the negatives of having your library digitally. I've already brought up some of those instances. But another thing about it is you just never know, right? Like, let's say PlayStation goes out of business. However unlikely that is, there goes your library. There go all the games you spent money on or played for hours upon hours. And with physical, I don't have to worry about that. Like, let's say the PS3 stores finally go down, which they have been threatened before. My collection of PS3 games will still be playable. I'll still be able to play them. So I really think that's a big factor that a lot of people take for granted, And I will always be a collector. I love collecting games and having them on my shelf and everything like that. So that's always a big bonus to me. And I really just don't have much of a preference for digital. I will buy them if that's the only option. Now, a lot of reports come in and they talk about how, this mini games was digital versus physical, but there's a lot of things that aren't taken into consideration. I think digital numbers are a little inflated. I mean, just how many indie games are there that, are only available digitally, and how many of those make up for the sales? And then when you're doing every marketplace, you also have a lot of phone games that get added to the digital numbers. And I do know quite a few people that still collect physical games, and I will collect physical games until I can't anymore, if that ever happens, even though I think it's unlikely, considering, people still buy vinyl records. There will always be collectors, and collectors will usually prefer physical mediums. Another thing I wanted to bring up in the whole big digital versus physical debate is, oftentimes in a lot of my gaming groups and forums out there, I unfortunately see a lot of arguments about digital versus physical, and one thing I've noticed is that digital fans have a tendency to have this superiority complex. They will run around going, "We're the future, get with the program, blah, blah, blah." They will act very superior about it. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of physical fans is we just want to be able to do our thing. We just want to be able to collect our games, put them on the shelf, and call it a day. We don't have a tendency to care how you game. We just want to be able to have the option. That would be the best of both worlds. Having the freedom to game the way you want to. We shouldn't lose one medium over the other. And I feel that it's important to keep both of them as an option. That's it for today's discussion. If you have any insight or information you'd like to share, or just what you prefer, then go ahead and leave a comment down below. Thanks for tuning in.